Okay, so this is the last video for this first section, first chapter in the textbook. If you haven't seen the first two parts where I go through some of the language of algebra and just some writing expressions, please have a look at those examples first. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through this final example where I go through substituting values into expressions. So when you see the word substitute, or sometimes in questions they'll also ask you to evaluate, what they're asking you to do is to replace values into your pronumerals. So you're replacing, so here what you're doing is you're replacing pronumerals, so our letters that we were talking about before, with numerical values. So you're replacing them with numerical values. Now, a few notes about this. Firstly, just remember, when you see your algebraic terms, often they'll come with a coefficient and a pronumeral. So just remember, you need to split the pronumeral and coefficient with, just remember, if you have a pronumeral and a coefficient, there's a hidden multiplication symbol. Then the other note is to remember your BODMAS. Now, some of you might have been taught other ways of calling this, but this is one I remember. So this is, B stands for, you do your brackets first. Then you do your orders, so your powers. So if you see something squared, something cubed, so on. Then you have the next two, and you do these ones at the same time. So this is division or multiplication. And the last two is your adding and subtracting. So you remember, you need to do it in this order. So here we have three examples that we're going to go through. So let's have a look at this example. Evaluate these expressions if A is equal to 5, B is equal to 6, and C is equal to -3. So what we're doing here is we're substituting A is equal to 5. So we're replacing A with 5, we're replacing B with 6, and replacing C with -3. So let's have a go with this first one, A, or question A. I've got 3A plus B. Now if you have a look, I've got an A and I've got a B. So I'm going to just replace or substitute A with, what value is A? A is equal to 5. And for B, B is equal to 6. So I'm going to replace those values, A with 5 and B with 6. Now the first part, 3A. What I said before was I need to split my pronumeral and my coefficient. The coefficient is just a number at the front, and my pronumeral is my letter. So here, this is going to be 3 times A. So I'm going to replace it with 3 times 5, because that is the value of A that we're going to substitute in. Then we're going to do plus, what's the value of B? B is equal to 6. So I'm going to do 3 times 5 plus 6. Here, this is where you need to use your BODMAS. Which operation comes first? Do I do my multiplication here first? Or do I do my addition? Well, hopefully you remember, I'm doing my multiplication first. So here, I'm going to do the multiplication. 3 times 5 gives me 15. Then I'm going to add 6. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm going to evaluate 2. I've got 21. 15 plus 6 gives me 21. So here, this was the first substitution that we did. Okay, so next one, part B. I've got 2A minus bracket B plus C bracket. Okay, now I haven't dealt with C yet. The value of C is -3. So here, I'm going to substitute just like I did before. 2A minus bracket B plus C. Okay, like I did before, because A has a coefficient at the front, is a written down coefficient of 2, I'm just going to do 2 times the value of a, which is 5, minus, I'm going to open up my bracket. Now, I haven't made a note of this yet, but please do note, whenever you see a pronumeral by itself, b, for example, so e.g., b, that's just the same as doing 1 times b. We don't actually write this 1 because it takes, if I wrote 1b every time I saw a b, it'd be quite annoying. So when I see a b or just any pronumeral by itself, it's just 1 times that pronumeral. So here I'm going to have 6 plus, well, we have negative 3. Negative 3. I'm going to put that in a bracket again. Now, we're going to use BODMAS here, so we're going to solve our bracket first. We're going to do that b plus c bracket first. Now, if you have a look inside the bracket, I'll make it highlight, it's this bracket here. I've got 6 plus negative 3. Now, if you remember, we did this in the topic that we just did before. If I do 6 plus negative 3, that's the same as doing 6 minus 3. So here, what I'm going to write it as is 2 times 5 minus, what's 6 minus 3? Well, 6 minus 3 is just 3. Okay, I'm going to apply BODMAS again. Which one am I going to do first? Well, I'm going to do my multiplication first. So here, I'm going to have 10 minus 3. And to finish it off, I have this final answer of 7. Okay, so those are my first 2 examples. Now the last one I'm going to write here, C, for example C, I've got a squared minus bc. A squared minus bc. Now, a note here, just like we had before, when you see something like this, bc, just like we did with our coefficients, this is just the same as writing b times c. B times c. Another note is when you square a number, that's the same as doing a times a. There's a button on your calculator that actually helps you do this squaring, but in the case you forget, a squared is just a times a. So what am I going to do here? I'm going to substitute my values in. I'm going to substitute a, which was 5, b, which was 6, and c, which was negative 3. So let's do that. Here, I'm just going to write, well, I'm going to put a bracket just to show that I'm doing this. A, the value of a is just 3. So I'm going to square my 3. Actually, I'll just write it without the bracket just to make it a little bit clearer. Squaring my 3. Minus, now what I said was when we see BC, that's just B times C. So I'm going to have 6 times negative 3. I'll put a bracket around my negative sign just to make it a little bit separate from the others. Okay, BODMAS. What am I going to do first? Well, the bracket here isn't actually part of the bracket operation, so I don't need to worry about this yet. But I do have an order. I have this 2, or squared, and I'm going to deal with that first. So 3 squared, 3 times 3, that just gives me 9. Minus 6 times minus 3. Okay, now I do my multiplication. I'm doing 6 times minus 3. Now, if you remember when we did multiplication of negative numbers and positive numbers, positive and negative gives me a negative. So here, this is just going to become 9 minus negative. What's 6 times 3? 18. Now, when we did our addition and subtraction of negative numbers, we've got 9 minus negative 18. When you subtract a negative number, that's the same as adding the positive version. So here I'm going to have 9 plus 18. 9 plus 18 is going to give me 27. So that's how we do substitution. And with this, we've covered all of the things you'll need to be able to know for the first section. Once again, if you're not sure of how to do a particular skill, go back in the video, watch it again. If you need to, go watch it a little bit slower. You can pause it at different points, but have a go at the questions in exercise 3A.